Okay, welcome everybody on behalf of the Green European Foundation and also think tank Oikos on this, let's call it a seminar, a digital seminar. And it's happening in the framework of the project Cities as Places of Hope in Europe. Because as you all know, if you look at the European Union, you can look at it at the level of nation states working together and sometimes not working together. But you can also look at Europe as a landscape full of progressive cities realizing transformative policies. And if we look at Belgium, I think Ghent is one of these cities really implementing transformative policies as member of many networks with other cities. You can name them in the north from Helsinki to the south from Barcelona. We see actually a thriving network of cities that show two important things. First, that the transition to socio-ecological society is possible, but at the same time, it also enhances the quality of life of the people living in the city. And I think this is a crucial point to make. Of course, transition is difficult. You have to change things. Not everybody likes changes, but at the same time, when it enhances the quality of life, people also will support it. So I think this is something that I personally experienced in Ghent with, for instance, the mobility plan. Really the quality, it was not only the mobility that changed, but also the quality of life. Okay, that for the introduction. We had invited two vice mayors of the city of Ghent, Tine Heyse and Filip Watteeuw. As it goes in politics, unfortunately, Tine Heyse had an agenda change, so she will not be available, but I'm very happy that two of her collaborators are very willing to explain to us two, I would say, key policies, which Tine Heyse is implementing. First, of course, climate policy. I think this is crucial for all cities, but also Ghent has started a policy on dekolonization, which I think is also crucial in the current times. And then in the second half of the seminar, we are very happy to have with us the Vice Mayor, Filip Watteeuw himself, who will talk about the mobility policy in Ghent. So I'm very happy to first introduce Joris Ganseman, who will talk about the climate and energy policy of Ghent. Joris, you have the floor.
Okay, Dirk, thank you. And thank you very much for inviting me and for taking the time to listen to the story of Ghent. As Dirk said, I will mainly talk about climate policies and also the way in which we use climate policy to improve people's lives. And that's almost always our focus. It's an opportunity. The challenge is huge. I don't have to convince you about that. But if we can use this challenge also to make a better city, that's something we have to do. I will share my screen with you. I've prepared a short presentation. So for those of you who don't know where Ghent is a medium-sized town. We have 260,000 inhabitants in Belgium, in between Brussels and the coast. And as you can see on this picture, we are an old historic town dating back from the old Roman times. It has advantages living in such a beautiful city with old buildings, but it has also quite a lot of disadvantages. I will come to that later. First of all, I want to introduce you to the team of green politicians who are leading the way for the moment. It's Elke, it's Filip who will talk later on, it's Zeynep, it's Bram, it's Hafsa, and it's Tine. And I work for Tine Heyse. She's the deputy mayor of climate policy in Ghent. But we have really a lot of policy areas in which we are currently working. We are in government since 2013, if I'm not mistaken. And so we already, this is the second term now, the Greens are in the government in Ghent. And we are, and we can say it, we are changing the city step by step, and it's with a lot of difficulties, but anyway. Here, as I said, we are a small town. We have a vibrant community of all citizens, organizations. It's something really that sets Ghent a bit aside. Civil society is really strong here. We have a high-ranking university. We have a big harbor there with lots of industrial activity. And but despite all the pep talk, we also have quite a lot of problems. The poverty, for example, in Ghent is really high. 1 out of 6 people in Ghent live below the poverty line. We've got a huge housing problem. House prices are soaring. It's very difficult to get a house. The air quality is already getting better thanks to the green policies in place, but it's still quite a lot to do. We've got climate change acting now. We've got food security problems. So it's not because we are a town in a rich part of Europe that everything goes smooth and without problem. But nonetheless, we clearly have a dream of our city, and it's also something very important. First of all, not to deny the problems there are, but also to state the alternative there is. We want a green, healthy city for people, with clean air, powered by 100% renewable. So we really have this dream of the city, and we also try to make it real. When it's about climate policy, we started in 2009 with the Covenant of Mayors. That's a European scheme of all cities, in which which gives a good framework to start. It forces you to measure very detailed all the different areas, sectors in which there is CO2 emissions, and it makes you it forces you also to make a plan how to diminish all those CO2 emissions. Also, there is now the part of adaptation, climate adaptation, which is included, and in the end of the year, there will be a new version of the Covenant of Mayors. So it's a good framework to start, but in Ghent, we also thought, that climate challenge is much more than just reducing CO2 emissions. It's also a way of changing the society. It's how can we live and have a different economy. And that's why, for example, although it's not included in this European covenant, we also included a food policy in our climate policy. We also included circular economy into our climate policies. Now I will tell you just one more thing. The good news is that when you look at CO2 emissions, local climate policy really works. We are going down. We are now at more or less minus 20% compared to 2005. And our target is for 2030, minus 40% CO2 emissions. So it's detail, it's data and it's graphs, but still it's just to show if you do it and if you set your targets and get your policies right, it can work. I will tell you now about 3 of our policy areas in which we think we are in the right direction. It's not that we already know how to solve the climate challenge completely, but there is also no silver bullet for climate policy. It's a very tailor-made approach, and you have to do it on the basis of your the characteristics of your city, of your local community. And in Ghent, we decided, the first part I will tell about, is that we decided to work on housing and the energy use of buildings, because in Ghent it's like more or less a a third, a bit less, but a quarter of the CO2 emissions comes from heating and cooling of buildings. So to tackle that problem, it's already very helpful. First of all, we set out to get a good view about the current state of the buildings in our city. We did it together with the University of Ghent, and here you see some numbers, but it's like the 43% of the houses has less than 5 centimeters of insulation. Fossil gas is the major source of heating. Many houses still have single sheets of glass, so there is still a lot of work to do. We did the calculation, more or less we need to renovate 3,000 houses a year to be fossil free and to be climate proof in 2050. 3,000 houses a year in a city of about 80,000 houses. So the task is really very, very big. But then we set out also with the help of the university. It's something we in our climate policy we rely very much upon. That's the knowledge of our university. Is that we studied like what are the main barriers that people withhold from acting on their house, from renovating, from things. And there are very simple things that are very logical. It's like the people just don't have the money. But still, there are many people who do have enough money and don't do the renovation. So why is that? And then we came out that the most important thing that withholds people from renovating their house is that they are afraid of the dust, of the hassle, of the problems with constructors. So it's something psychological, something practical. And so that's why we decided to set up a one-stop shop, we call it. And it's a model that's now being copied all over Europe. And it's called the Energie Centrale. And citizens can there apply for a full service renovation. So once you contact the Energie Centrale, this one-stop shop, a specialist comes at your house. He makes he defines the most important actions you have to take. He offers technical advice. He searches for contractors for you. He finds you a good loan, which we also provide from the city. And so this whole package, it's meant to be a hassle-free renovation, and apparently it works. So last 6 years, we had almost 6,500 advices. There were 3,000 renovations that were completely assisted by the people from the Energie Centrale. And we issued 1,000 loans, more or less. And this political term, we have doubled more or less the investment we put in the Energie Centrale. And we see that it really helps to speed up renovations. We also try to improve all the different steps that withhold people from, in fact, in this case, getting to the Energie Centrale. And it's a very simple thing which we did that was extremely successful. So in the beginning, people had to go to the town hall with their plans, with their with the photos of their house, whatever, and they could there get free advice from the expert. And then we decided to do an experiment, and instead of asking people to come to the town hall, we immediately go directly to people's house when they contact us. And it more than doubled the amount of, that's the green arrow you see there, the amount of advices that were issued from 1 month to the other. So it was a very small change in the way we work, but extremely successful. So that's I will skip this, but we try to improve things we do step by step, and by it seems to work. Another area in which we are now investing, it's collective renovations, and we focus on apartments because that's the easiest way to focus on collective renovations. And there, the city also helps. We recently contracted 2 people to assist in renovations of apartments, and they, because apartments in Belgium, and I guess everywhere in Europe, are a complex mixture of people who rent, people who own an apartment. So it's always very difficult to make decisions in such a community of people. And there the city just also looks for all the technical assistance, also looks for the contractors, makes the different contracts, and so makes it as easy as possible for people in an apartment to renovate. And here you see 2 examples in which we assisted in new glazing, which immediately, certainly for apartments this size, had an enormous impact on their energy bills. Yes, I will speed up a little bit, but this work, this service we have for renovation of buildings. I already mentioned the numbers. We currently we are about 1,000 houses a year, which we renovate through the city services, and we want to speed up that to 2,500 by 2025, sorry. But you see, it also has an economic return. In the last 5 years, there was like more or less of 35 million euros in private investments and 600 jobs in construction. So it also has, it's not only improving the houses of the people, the quality of the comfort of their homes, but it also generates some local economic activity. A second area in which we work is food policy. It's called Ghent en garde, and it's a bottom-up approach for a local food policy. Why did we choose food as another area? Because the climate impact of food is enormous. But secondly, and even more importantly, food is the one topic with which you can enlarge your climate policy, get more people involved in climate policy, because food, it's something general through all cultures, all people, everyone needs and likes to eat. And so it's the #1 topic if you want to broaden your scope of your climate policy. We won a UN award for our approach, which is the center is a local food council with about 35 people of all different kinds of corners of society. We've got farmers, we've got shopkeepers, we've got academics, we've got citizens who are engaged in all kinds of organizations. And first of all, they give advice to the city about our food policy, but they also have their own budget with which they can fund new projects. I will just show 2 of those projects as an example, but there are every year around 4 or 5 of those projects that are launched through this food council. One is called Food Savers. And Food Savers, they collect unsold but almost expired food, but still of perfect quality, and they collect it in supermarkets, but they collect it also from large kitchens and bakeries and all kinds of places where they have lots of unsold food. And instead of destroying it, we collect it. It's also it's in a cool center, and there it goes to organizations who work with vulnerable people who really can use this food. So that's one example. Another one is rabot op je bord. They also work with unsold food and leftovers, but there it's a local community shop, a grocery store, where it's also a social project where they use the unsold food to prepare new food themselves and then sell it through the community shop. So that's two examples. There are many more. So there are projects with farmers, with transport of food, with restaurants. But there's it has created a large dynamic in Ghent. And then the last topic I wanted to briefly touch, it's climate adaptation. And it's the way in which we are now rebuilding the city to include much more green in the city to make it more livable. Dry, and you see that everything that used to be green now is brown on Google Maps. And it's just to show that also here climate change is already upon us. We have very dry summers. We've had very dry summers up to now. This year is different, but you see water tables are declining. There are many problems with drought and heat the last years. And one way in which we structure the city is by the groen klimaatassen, it's called. It is green infrastructure to bring nature, to bring fresh air into the city, and at the same time provide a way in which people can go outside of the city through this blue-green infrastructure. Here you see a map of Ghent with the big nature areas, mainly nature reserves, which are connected to the city center with blue-green corridors. And I will just show you some pictures that you can have an image of what it's like. So this is one of the major nature reserves we have in Ghent, the Ghent Meersen. And those are connected through also bicycle infrastructure to the city center. So people can walk and cycle from the city center to these large green areas. We also put new parks and old parks along this axis. So we get a green connection from the city center to the nature areas. And we also put like microgreen in the streets in Ghent, also together with civil society. This initiative, it's called the Sideway Garden Gang, and it's a project that started with citizens' budgets, but now they are running more or less on themselves. And it's very simple. People call them and they come and put a sideway garden. It's a garden in front of their house. People who live in certain streets with very few green, they don't have to pay anything. There the city pays for the plant material. In streets where there's already more green and it's less urgent, people have to pay a small fee for the service. But still, it has created more than, I guess, 1,500 of those sideway gardens in the last 2 years, which is a tremendous amount. And so this here you still see the small map of the groen klimaatassen. And it goes right into the heart of the city. Here you see also a new small park we created in the city center. It's called the het Mozaïekpleintje. And on the right-hand corner, you see how it was some years ago. It's one of the most beautiful spots in the city, but there was parking lots, and now it's all changed to a beautiful green space. And there's always not on this picture, but I can assure you, when it's good weather, there's always a lot of people around. So that's how we created this network of nature from the heart of the city to the outskirts. So here I want to conclude. We are in Ghent implementing social climate policies in a lot of areas. I showed you 3, but there's many more. And we try to always combine the climate challenge with improving people's lives. So that was my story.
Okay, Joris, thank you very much for this very interesting and concise presentation. Maybe you can stop sharing. Okay, yes. Thank you very much. And yeah, as said, we have a tight schedule, but there's already one very interesting question. Hans Goldenberg has a question about these 700 jobs that were created in construction. What kind of jobs, where do they come from? What are the working conditions? So that's the question.
Okay, those jobs are in different areas. First of all, and directly through the city are the jobs for the experts who give the advice, and we have now it's becoming a thriving community of architects, other experts that also work on a freelance basis for the city to give those advice, but that's about 20-30 people. But then there's a lot of jobs in regular construction. So it's people implementing the measures, putting new roofs, putting the insulation, installing heat pumps. So it's all kind of
are that smaller companies or are that big companies? Any idea how?
It's most of the time it's smaller companies, because on the housing market on which we are focusing now, it's mainly small companies in Ghent. The big companies, they work for large projects, which we are not so involved in. So so those jobs are mainly for small contractors. It's in Belgium, there's it's a big problem to get to find people for the construction jobs. So there's also there's a lot of people from everywhere in Europe in those construction jobs. Yeah.
Okay.
I hope it's an answer to your question.
Sure. Thanks. I would say if